I'd like to call this meeting to order. We have a quorum this evening. All members are in attendance. Would Mr. Twigg like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
The flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Shelley, second by Dr. Meyer. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And on to the special report for this evening. Dr. Baker, would you like to present the superintendent's FY 2019 recommended budget?
I would. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do want to make sure that I'm coming through okay, so just, can the board hear me okay? Sounds good. All right. I've got a script here, but it's funny, I wanted to start off because I had someone, and she knows who she is, ask me if I get nervous before presenting the budget. And at the time I said, not really, but oh my gosh. I think it's because of, again, how important the budget is to our school division and our students and all of us who are participants in this process. But I thank you for the opportunity. Good evening, school board members. Dr. Martin or Dr. Clerk, SCPS staff and community in attendance or watching. It's a privilege to share with you the FY19 budget proposal, which is in essence the superintendent's recommended budget. I want to thank the staff, the school board, and community for their input and support throughout the development process. I would also like to acknowledge our almost 24,000 students who indeed inspire the work and whose immediate and future needs drive the budget process. This past summer at our school division's annual Leadership Learning Exchange, which is a professional learning conference that is hosted and supported internally, we launched the theme to elevate for the 2017-18 school year. And throughout that conference, presentations and networked centered on how we, as teachers and instructional leaders, can continue to elevate the learning and achievement of our students through understanding and application of different or better ways to actually serve them. As defined by, I think, Google, elevate means to raise or lift something up to a higher position, raised to a more important or impressive level. Ultimately, our intention through every process or program is to elevate the quality of services in order to elevate our school system's performance. So throughout the presentation this evening, I'm going to highlight and reinforce, through the lens of the proposed budget, ways in which we can and do target resources to enable our organization to elevate. These primary ways are through investments in people and processes, which remain the keys to better work, better conditions, and a higher performing, more effective culture. Many of the people that we will talk about this evening that we invest in are teachers and leaders and support staff, students, parents, and our community. And in terms of processes, we'll focus a lot on our strategic planning that is most substantially supported through the budget development, the execution, which involves targets and allocations, the stewardship of those resources, and systemic teamwork, collaboration, and communication. So keeping the main thing, supports our potential and ability to elevate. From every lens, including the budget perspective lens, our main thing is student learning and achievement, supported and delivered by teachers, leaders, support staff, and our community. In building our capacity to better assure and support learning and achievement for every child in every school and every classroom, we developed a framework for teaching and learning. It represents a culture of learning and growth we strive to develop and nurture, and it's intended to be much more than a symbolic representation. The framework was developed to generate action, to propel our system to create positive change and transformation in how we support planning, delivery, assessment, and learning environments. As will be recurring throughout this presentation, it's also intended to reinforce a focus on relationships and students making connections, finding meaning in their learning. So professional learning continues to be focused in our school division on our school system's understanding and capacity to provide what is called visible learning. Using the context of this budget proposal, I am going to humbly attempt to model the concept by providing to you, the school board, clarity regarding what success will look like for you following this presentation. And of course, if you're not successful, it'll be because of your teacher, which will be me. For this evening, I'm hoping that you'll be able to at least be able to answer and generally articulate an understanding of what is listed here as the success criteria. And it's a little small, but I'm trying to read it. To understand how the budget process is integrated and aligned with SCPS strategic planning. To be able to identify the main FY19 budget goals and investment highlights. To be able to explain the why or the rationale/drivers behind the funding goals. And then to be able to show the importance of resources to increase and enhance student success. One way in which our schools and classrooms intentionally reflect visible learning and bring the teaching and learning framework to life is by ensuring each learning experience results in students being able to confidently respond to these three questions. What am I learning? Why am I learning it? And how will I know I have learned it? The SCPS strategic plan, as you know, continues to serve as our blueprint, guide, and compass for continuous improvement and achievement. The plan is the work. It is the work that we do. And each year processes, budget goals, and allocation of resources are aligned with the goals of preparing all students to be college and career ready through a culture of collaboration with the staff and community in a safe, caring, engaging, and healthy learning environment. So remembering, reinforcing, and internalizing why we exist, going back to that question of why, it is at the heart of our organization, and it's at the heart of our SCPS mission. For us, we have defined our why as together we prepare our students for their future. Ideally, what that future looks like, what evaluating looks like by design, is embodied in our vision to be a leading school division that inspires and empowers all students to become creative thinkers, problem solvers, and effective communicators by ensuring engaging and supportive learning environments, providing a broad spectrum of innovative opportunities, and building lasting partnerships with the community to educate our students. Now, how we do the work across the organization are our core values, from classroom instruction to division leadership to support services, including transportation and food service, is reflected in our shared core values. So, looking at this graphic from a systems perspective, which I encourage you to continue to view a lot of the work we do from a systems perspective, our strategic plan, when we ensure that it is the work and not a symbolic document, helps us to maintain a strong focus moving as one relative to continuous improvement and quality assurance. So it transforms our work into being like this. And given our school division size alone, we must ensure that all actions and initiatives enable us to move forward, not sideways. Articulated another way, we simply want to be working smarter rather than just harder. And then viewed yet another way, our plans, actions, and departments are not separate and isolated, but we try to ensure that they are aligned and integrated. While there are many measures and indicators of quality and achievement, I want to highlight a few that, for me, reinforce some of the positive results that are associated with both people and process investments over time. SCPS has been recognized as meeting both state, national, and international standards through accreditation measures. You will note that all of our schools are state accredited, 97% fully accredited, meeting or exceeding all state required benchmarks. To further validate that quality, Advanced Ed, the largest national and international accrediting agency, recognized Spotsylvania County Public Schools as one of only a small percentage of state school districts to receive district accreditation. And most recent, our school division's commitment to providing opportunities and educating the whole child through music education was acknowledged as we were recognized as one of the 2017 Best Communities for Music Education. We also had 3 schools receive the Blue Ribbon Schools of Music Award. And finally, our school division received the National Association for the Education of Homeless Children and Youth Award, acknowledging our school division's outstanding work in support of our homeless population. This slide, as well as the next several, are going to illustrate that process and investments have yielded continued and sustained improvement in areas of accountability, including the percentage of schools receiving full accreditation status. And here you see the percentage of on-time graduates increasing over time. And as you can see here, we continue to note an increase in participation in our advanced placement courses. We have encouraged earlier participation beginning in 9th grade and participation by non-traditional advanced placement students, which supports our focus on equity that I'm going to highlight a little bit later. Performance on more rigorous state grade level and end-of-course tests demonstrate both improvement and the need for additional targeted resources and supports to close achievement gaps. Here you see reading and English highlighted, and writing. You'll note, again, this is in all of the subgroups, and it shows where we are in terms of 2014 to now, and obviously where there are still performance or achievement gaps. And math. Our students are also becoming more competitive, as evidenced by the continued increase in the amount of college scholarships our students are offered to receive each year. So the next section of the presentation identifies and summarizes influences and drivers of our school division budget that are in some cases universal or common, and in others unique to Spotsylvania County Public Schools. However, they do require our focus in determining the best way to target and allocate fiscal resources. Beginning with this fall, our rising freshmen, current 8th graders, will be expected to meet the new criteria set forth by the state called Profile of a Virginia Graduate. The shift is from our current lens of content attainment, what students know, to workforce readiness skills, what they can do, such as the 5 C's of critical thinking, collaboration, communication, creative thinking, and citizenship. Our division has been working proactively and tirelessly to be prepared for this significant and actually a positive change. As you can see, coming back again to the framework of teaching and learning, it aligns perfectly with the Virginia Profile of Graduate Expectations. It's also to note that a prime influence in our budget process is simply that we are one of the Commonwealth's largest school divisions. And as we move closer to 24,000 pre-K to 12 students, it should be noted that this year we've increased our total enrollment by over 200 students and are projected to continue an upward growth trend over the next 5 years. Also influencing our funding is the support of our operation over 31 facilities. In Spotsylvania, we also have a large, very large geographical area to support student transportation that also requires additional resources and support. However, in order to, as the theme of this presentation encourages the school board, in order to elevate, we cannot raise the level of our performance unless we focus on another influence that is embedded in the essence of our mission here in Spotsylvania County. That is to provide equity in terms of educational services and quality, equity for every child. Now, equity, as we have defined it as an organization, means that we provide students the support and the leverage resources based on what the individual student needs rather than providing the exact same for all. Now, as this graphic illustrates, what is fair and equitable may be quite different than what might be equal. And I encourage you from that context to continue to view other supports that we will be calling for. Elevating through a focus on equity compels us to view who the students are that we serve now, what their needs are, and how to target and utilize resources to meet them. We serve to prepare all students for their future. This slide provides how those needs are more diverse and significant over time. From explosive continuing growth in special education enrollment to increasing numbers of students who speak English as a second language. So providing or delivering the services amidst increasing challenges and a need requires an investment in the people we employ and charge to do and support the good work. The best way to say it is the challenges are greater and the resources are fewer. And what those same resources have to do today is much more complex, much more demanding than it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. While open to interpretation, I believe irrigating deserts to be significantly more complex and demanding work than cutting down jungles. It might mean that our work requires more heart than information, more hope and encouragement, a relationship rather than solely academic expectations and material. It involves ensuring that every child has access to a meaningful pathway with the clarity that not only they can succeed, but in succeeding, they will fulfill dreams, both their own and those of others. And how do we hope to irrigate deserts, be the difference makers, the equalizers in the learning and lives of children? Through the individual and collective commitment and profound work of teachers, leaders, and support staff. And those statistics are on this graph. And then this picture shows that while the work is different in many ways, whether you are a talented teacher like our Division Teacher of the Year, Melanie Russ from Cedar Forest, or you serve in a support capacity at the school or division level, the work is ultimately all about service, care, and yes, love. So as we are a public school entity dependent on funding, it is important for planning and decision-making that we stay attuned to current funding trends. In terms of the average per pupil expenditure, our school division does remain well below the average when compared with the 132 school divisions that comprise the Commonwealth. This trend of the local composite index continues to increase for Spotsylvania County Public Schools, which means we receive slightly less funding per that formula adjustment. Here are recent trends in state and local funding, which make up the majority of funding our school division receives. Now, unlike previous years, I am able to say that while the pace of this increase in funding at the state and local level still keeps us at pre-recession funding levels, it is nice to see that it is beginning to go in the right direction over a period of years. It's also important to note and express appreciation that over the past 2 years, our county here in Spotsylvania and our Board of Supervisors have provided an increased funding with averages at approximately $3.5 million per year over those 2 years of recurring funding. We are hopeful that this support will continue as we move forward into FY19. So what are the primary FY19 budget goals? Remember that you have a test later. The first is to increase employee compensation. During the 2016 and 17 school year, our school division commissioned a compensation and benefit study through Evergreen Solutions, LLC. The study findings and recommendations, coupled with the work and recommendations of the compensation focus group, representing employee groups and stakeholders, both informs and supports this goal and the forthcoming recommendations. So it's clear that our people are absolute key to what we do and how we do it and how well we do it in order to continue to reward their loyalty, their hard work, excellence in performance amidst increasing demands and widespread shortage within employee groups, particularly that of teachers. The rationale or why behind a focus on increasing compensation is both obvious and critical. As this slide illustrates, teacher vacancies in Virginia have increased by 40% in the last decade, with 1,000 open positions in 2016. In Virginia, the average teacher salary is ranked 32nd in the nation by the National Education Association. And these figures correspond to a nationwide decline in teacher program enrollment. Again, this compels us to focus on increased funding for teacher compensation. I'll also note, again, an appreciation for our human resources team and our principals and our entire staff. We have been able to stay ahead of that curve or that shortage, but how much longer we can stay ahead of it will be dependent on a number of factors, including our ability to stay competitive and even, hopefully, create a competitive edge for ourselves. So in looking at a compensation proposal that is part of the budget goal number 1, after consultation with Evergreen Solutions and through the feedback from the compensation focus group, I'm recommending the implementation of a 3-year phased hybrid compensation plan for our employees, which includes a 4% pay increase for our teachers, a third implementation each year for the next 3 years of the classification solution for non-teachers, and then to bring to minimum solution for paraeducators, instructional technology aides, bus aides, and school security officers. Now, the advantages to this hybrid compensation proposal include, and we will speak more about this at later work sessions and certainly when we present to the county, but some of the advantages that we've noted in consultation with Evergreen is that all employees will see a pay increase. FY19 starting salaries would be higher. Teachers under Step 15 fare much better, which is important during the teacher shortage that we are currently experiencing and we are trying to stay ahead of. And then finally, the hybrid solution, especially over a 1-year and a 3-year period, we believe is more cost effective. So the second primary goal of the FY19 budget is increasing and directing additional human resources to schools and classrooms. As with the compensation proposal, this goal is also expected to be phased in over a 3-year period. A primary investment into the quality of schooling each year, especially as it relates to classroom support, is the investment in teachers in support of reasonable and manageable class sizes. With growth being realized both overall and especially in areas where needs or challenges are greater, continued classroom teachers are needed to maintain and target class areas where these averages are challenged. As we've said many times in the past, you may have heard, the whole story is not in the averages. And while secondary staffing averages have remained steady, some classrooms are certainly larger, while others may be smaller. In other words, at a minimum, we want to preserve these staffing levels moving forward. So how do we currently and how should we continue to support the diverse needs of students moving forward? This is one way to look at how we currently try to focus on school-centered investments representing all resources within the operating budget directed towards student learning, enrichment, and achievement. To the right is a breakdown of how school-based resources are directed within the schools themselves. And currently, we target investments in programs that support students with special needs, early literacy, rigorous college preparatory programs, and career readiness programs and courses. And these aren't all of the investments, they're not exclusive, but they certainly are what is directed to support student needs. And it also illustrates the many ways in which we already focus on meeting academic needs. Instructional technology is currently primarily funded through our capital improvement plan. However, we try to maximize those dollars. I'm going to refer to my glasses again. by providing a variety of devices that are utilized daily throughout our school division. Some of these examples include laptops and Chromebooks, iPads, tables, desktops. We are not a one-size-fits-all technology solution school division or a what some might call a one-to-one in the student device category. However, the focus of the devices is aligned with what the instructional objectives are and the needs for the classroom. There is also, with all of the technology that has been invested in and will continue to be invested in, provides an average of approximately a 2-to-1 ratio for students to devices. And it also enables our teachers to personalize and differentiate instruction for their students. And then instructional technology, the department itself, is actually, as we are structured, a subset of the larger instruction department, and they are able to identify and meet curriculum changes, such as what I had mentioned earlier, through the Virginia profile of a graduate. And so the additional resources that we are looking to promote and invest in to support our student needs include an increase in special education teachers of 19. And as I go through each of these, keep in mind I'm going to be providing a why or a rationale that is, again, not exclusive or not all-encompassing, but will certainly provide some level of an understanding in terms of the focus. So an increase in special education students is one of the reasons. Early childhood special education center students, we are now serving 338 early childhood special education students this year. And we have very strict staffing standards that we are allowed to have no more than 8 students, and at six at a time, depending on the disability category. We also have an increase in autism students. We have 52 more students with autism this year from last December 1 count. Our staffing standards are also stricter at the state level. You also will see throughout all of these resources that we have a growing population of students who come to school with mental health needs. We believe that a lot of these resources will provide us the potential to meet more students within the school division and to support them in ways that enable them to get to the academic learning. 104 students with mental health needs recently were placed outside of the school division. 720 truancy attendance meetings have already been requested this school year. 360 students require monitoring and a child in need of services petition, which is a new requirement for the state. Last year, there were 193 threat assessments and 243 risk assessments that were conducted. And as threat assessment laws have changed, it now requires an assessment of community members who also pose a threat. So the running theme here is that we are asked to do more and more to support our students and their families in and outside of the school and classroom. The number of foster care children needing support in our schools has increased. We have 59 additional children since last year. Last year, we had 583 students who were identified as homeless. We also have 3,385 families who have met the criteria for living in poverty. School counselors conducted a majority of risk assessments, and for the small number of counselors we have per student, they assessed over 243 students for suicide risk and facilitated 193 threat assessments. 211 high school students, less than 3%, requested to participate in a co-op course. A profile of a Virginia graduate, as well as our own focus on providing clarity for students in terms of future pathways. It compels us to offer an internship work experience for every student. And then we have the standards of quality expectations that have increased our need for 2 additional counselors that are needed at the elementary level and high school. You'll note from the second slide of additional resources being requested in this budget, gifted teachers' jobs have changed from supporting not only students identified for gifted services, but they are also needed to support differentiation for the entire student body. They are required to support rising scholars at the elementary level and students who are identified as twice exceptional that require both special education and gifted education support. An additional resource that I know that I have heard personally about as I've visited schools is to increase the number of instructional technology assistants that we have to closer to a 1-to-1 per school. The 8 additional positions would provide 1 full-time ITA in all high school and middle schools and 10 of the larger elementary schools. We would still have 7 elementary that would be sharing, as well as John J. Wright. Since the school year 2015-16, we have increased the number of devices that we utilize throughout our schools by over 6,000 throughout the division, with no increase to support personnel. So the additional ITAs would help free instructional coaches, primarily instructional technology resource teachers, who are assisting with tech support when the ITA is in a different building. We also have additional speech-language pathologists that are required to keep caseloads at a responsible size and to meet the expressive, receptive, and pragmatic language needs of our students. We also would like to add occupational therapists with the constant expansion of special education programs across the school division to meet the needs of that rising population. Additional occupational therapists are required to keep caseloads at a responsible size and to meet the sensory and fine motor needs of our students. And then finally, a signing assistant. The division currently compensates an individual on an hourly basis to support a student with disabilities at their home location. This position will be needed as long as the student resides in Spotsylvania County Public Schools. The summary highlights of this proposed budget are included over the next several slides. And as we shared earlier, the FY19 budget proposal includes a compensation proposal to recruit and retain high-quality staff. It is included in that as the phased implementation of the Evergreen Study Solutions. The additional full-time equivalent resources to support increased special needs students, increased mental health needs, increased technology needs, and maintaining pupil-teacher ratio at all levels. Additionally, elimination of the student athletic fee, increase in substitute pay, restoring both academic and athletic stipends to 2002 level, and the expansion of the current activity bus pilot. At your work session on Wednesday, for each of those items, there will be additional detail provided. The FY 2019 budget, not including the capital improvement plan, total $300 million, which represents an increase of $10.9 million or 3.7% over the FY 2018 adopted budget. Instruction is a total of $199.5 million or 66.4% of all funds excluding the capital improvement plan. Of the total revenue of $331.1 million, 43% or $142 million is derived from state and sales tax funding, and 38% or $125.2 million is local county funding. Compensation and benefits make up 85.1% of our operating funds when you take out the capital improvement and debt service. So, overall, the funding gap from this proposal is approximately $3.5 million. As we move forward as a board, you may determine that there are additional ways to close this gap, and you'll learn more on Wednesday. You may choose as a board to look to increase the gap based on other needs that have not been proposed for the FY19 budget. You also may choose to maintain it with the hope and belief that additional state and local funding may be received to ultimately close the gap completely. I again want to thank the county staff who reached out to us very recently and indicating that we can at this time, and it may be for the first time since I have been the superintendent, to be able to at least count on an increase above level as I propose the budget to support the amount of new debt service. And again, we are hoping that as we move forward and we explain to them more about our compensation proposal and need for additional resources, that there might be additional proposed as the county prepares its budget for the Board of Supervisors. So, I am hoping that after all of that, you can answer the questions and the success criteria, but as I'm not very confident, I did exactly what we say you don't do, which is lecture. in a classroom. But just in case, I'm going to provide a summary review so you can do well on your upcoming tests. To understand how the budget process is integrated and aligned with the Spotsylvania County Public Schools strategic planning. Hopefully you see that strategic plan sets out our mission and goals as a division. Our resource allocations are aligned to preparing our students for their future. Mission, vision, goals, core values, they are all aligned in terms of how we prepare our budget. To be able to identify the main FY19 budget goals and investment highlights, well, we said to increase compensation to our workforce and provide additional full-time equivalents. We know that some of the rationale behind that is the growing teacher shortage, which has been now revealed as a statewide and perhaps national crisis. Recommendations from Evergreen Solutions informing us of potential ways to move forward in making our salaries and benefits more competitive with the market. To be able to explain the why or the rationale drivers behind the funding goals, we have increased enrollment, we have increase in students with special needs, and we also have an increase in mental health needs. And then finally, to be able to show the importance of resources to increase and enhance student success. Well, in order to do that, we must support our increasing mental health needs, growing number of special education students, and rising student enrollment. We have experienced success and achievement with students, but we must continue to elevate in order to close achievement gaps. So over the past 5 years, I have visited schools. You're getting ahead of me. And I've met with hundreds of students at all levels. I never leave those discussions with the students, whether they are at breakfast, at lunch, or in an advisory setting, without asking them, what is their why? What is the meaning behind as they see it, right? Whether they're elementary, middle, or high school. What is their why in the form of what are your dreams? What are your hopes for your future lives and careers that education is intended to support and prepare you for? The dreams and career hopes I hear about are all exciting, and they are delivered with great enthusiasm. They're full of possibilities, and oftentimes they involve multiple careers simultaneously. We elevate when we focus on the why for our students and for our work as leaders. Then we use all of our resources to help our students make their dreams and their future goals a reality. So the focus on our students' future, ironically, creates an appropriate urgency for today, especially in regards to the budget work that we do together. And I will conclude, and folks who attended the Leadership Learning Exchange this summer will recall that I shared a picture, and yes, I took a picture on the highway, and I'll probably have some strange scrutiny for it. But it struck me because occasionally I will take because you know in Spotsylvania there are most routes you can find a countryside, or you can find bales of hay, or you can find a country road, or you can find that beautiful rural landscape that is, again, part of being a Spotsylvanian. And as I occasionally turn off of Brock Road and head down Catharpin, or as maybe the foreigners say, Cat Harpin, I noticed that the speeding limit is 35 miles an hour, and I was very good at staying at 35 miles an hour. But as you start to go around a curve, you find yourself going slightly downhill and picking up speed. And at least a half a dozen times, I caught myself beginning to accelerate speed, and I came upon this sign. And it reminded me of the importance of being safe, the importance of being very careful with my driving. And as I think about our work, we elevate and we increase our effectiveness when the conditions that impact all students, by remembering what we would want or expect for our own students or children. I don't know about all of you, but I love my kids, and something happens when I begin to think about them. And while I would not advocate that any of us try to parent in our professions, having that same sense of our schools only being good enough when they're good enough for our own children is a great way to improve and elevate what we do. It's in that slight language, change in language from students to children that reminds us how important our work together is for each child, their families, for our community, our state, our nation, and our world. And when we personalize it and we say, what would I want my child to have? I do believe it gives us an elevated perspective to do better work. And so finally, I look at each member of the school board, and I appreciate what I believe that each of you bring to the work of governing and now taking this budget process to the next level. And I think that most of you, with the exception of maybe Ms. Gramp, might recall a song from the 1970s called "We've Only Just Begun to Live." And you've only just begun to adopt a budget. And so as we come upon that, I thank you for all the passion that you bring, the perspective, the work that you're going to do together to enable us to move forward and elevate as a school division. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baker, for that very wonderful presentation, and thank you to the staff that I know you guys worked very hard on it as well. Are there any motions from the board to add comments, or would you like to go to the adjournment? Dr. Meyer?
Just a point of clarification. Dr. Baker, you'd mentioned the county funding. Did the 3.5 gap already include the proposed additional funding?
Yes, I thought I had clarified that, but we are able to state that the gap is where it is by including what the county has indicated they are already intending to propose at this time.
We do have a work session on Wednesday where we will get all of the more information in more detail, and so we can read this over. And Mr. Blaine?
I just want to, thank you for the comprehensive presentation. A lot to remember, a lot to think, and a lot to evaluate. But one of the things you pointed out was that we've done pretty well in the hiring area, and compared to some of the divisions around who were actually many teachers, regular teachers, short at the beginning of this last year, we were almost perfect, if I recall. We were one or two short at the most. And that is a real accomplishment, and it's true for a couple of things. Number one, our salaries have been competitive, and we want to keep them that way. But in addition to that, we've gotten to have a reputation in the field of education of being a good place to work. And that's been a very major reason why people have coming back. And as long as we maintain that, we're in good shape. But if we ever lose that reputation, then the teachers that are graduating from college, they won't ever even bother come to see us. So our reputation, we want to stress. The other question I have is, as you think about your budget and the important things you've mentioned, if I were to ask you, what are the next 3 things that would be very high on your priority list? Things that we certainly need dozens of things. You tried to select the critical ones. But what are the next 3 in line if you had an opportunity to have them?
Well, I think some of those, when we have our work sessions, I'll also be sharing some ideas for things that we did not include in the budget proposal that would require recurring funding. But I know that each year the discussion comes up about if there is funding available for one-time use. And I think that it's hard for me to say that there are 3 other things that don't involve resources. So under that theme of making sure that our classrooms, that our teachers, that everyone is adequately resourced, I would continue to add in those areas before I would probably go to another 3 areas right now. I will say that our non-compensation in terms of things that do not go directly to personnel certainly limits us. We still continue to have to find ways to fund what really should be recurring items with one-time funding, and then hope that we can continue to receive it. Areas like professional learning, I think as we have a teacher shortage, not only in terms of folks entering programs, but we know that the state is going to be working with local school divisions, hopefully in the future, to provide more flexibility in terms of what are currently some of the requirements for those programs, because we have folks that might want to teach, but currently the requirements are so stringent based on where they are that they're not going to do that, or they can't get hired because they are not certified. So I think that being able to provide on-site training locally requires additional funding and additional means, because we have to make sure that if there are gaps in training, because we need to have people in the classroom, that we have the capacity to do that here. And so I think there are several areas in terms of that happens. I think there's also, and I think Mr. Twigg has brought this up to me individually, I think continuing to make sure that our students and teachers have as much as they possibly can on a day-to-day basis to support students. It's just that usually with things come needs, and usually the things by themselves require, other people to help support them, i.e. the technology. But I also think being able to, we like to continue to increase what we do through our capital improvement plan. We'd like to continue to make our facilities more state-of-the-art and move in areas where we can create more flexible learning environments, as we are doing both at through the grant at Nye River, and then also hopefully in the future at Cortland High School. So I don't think I listed 3, but that's something to think about.
I appreciate that, and it makes the point that there's a lot of needs that exist that really should be, if we could do everything, we could use a lot more than we're asking for.
Dr. Meyer.
With what Mr. Blaine has said, I think I want to give congratulations to Dr. Baker and the staff, because you've been able to create a focus on the budget, highlighting the 2 most important things that I think that we need to address, and that is you're coming up with an employee compensation plan, a 3-year plan, as well as addressing because of the needs of the continually changing student population and those needs, our special ed, our technology, and mental health, that you're proposing a budget which addresses those needs. So I think you've really accomplished in the budget your 2 major goals, but as well as some of our ongoing things like sunsetting, the athletic fees, and coming up with a game plan that the board can evaluate. I think we'll most probably get into on Wednesday. A budget driver that wasn't mentioned here is the health insurance component, and I think that's going to be a major player. The other thing that I kind of worry about is the governor has presented his budget, on which the school division has built its budget, but now we have to wait till all parties and how that's going to play out in the General Assembly as to where we are going to stand with what the state will provide. So I know those are all question marks, and I'm not creating alarm bells. I'm just saying that it's a process that we go through, and I know that we'll just keep our eye attuned to as we follow the process. But I do want to say congratulations and thank you for, I think, preparing and presenting to us a very doable, and we'll get into the details, the nitty-gritty, starting Wednesday. Thank you.
Mr. Paswell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief. Dr. Baker, I want to thank you for your presentation. I want to first draw our attention to slide 2, where we say the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And I believe that this budget does that because when we go back to slide number 67 on our sheet, or 66, that was shown on television, it says, "Together we prepare our students for their future," and we see a picture of a lot of elementary school students as they're preparing themselves for their future. And I've had the opportunity, as I walk through my day-to-day activities in Spotsylvania County, to run across young people that I help coach or knew when they were middle school or high school students. And they're grown young men and women now, and they're doing great and amazing things because we took the time to invest in them. And that's what we're really all about. That's taking care of the main thing. It's what we're in business to do. And I can say, based off of my conversations with these young people that I've run across in stores and coming back when they come back from college and a variety of other things, we have the main thing in this budget, and it's investing in those young people that we see on slide 66 or 67, because that's what it's really all about. And so thank you for that. And also with the compensation, we understand that we're competing regionally for resources that are very scarce, and that's teachers. We have to compete with King George, we have to compete with Stafford, we have to compete with Caroline County, and they all want the limited resources that are available, which are qualified teachers. And so we have to make sure that we have a competitive salary so we can attract the very best and brightest here at Spotsylvania County. Thank you.
Ms. Shelley?
Thank you. And I'm going to tag on to what Mr. Braswell said about competing, and then I'm going to, because it's on the top of my head right now, and we're also competing with Northern Virginia. So people have got to remember that. We're also competing with Prince William County, Fairfax County, Loudoun County, and the big counties that are paying a whole lot more. But I'm going to go back now. Thank you so much. I know this was a lot of work for you and your staff. Wonderful job. I like all the additions. We do need more people in special ed. We need more people everywhere. So I appreciate all of that. I like that you said we need to focus on the why. The why are our kids, our children. As you said, they're not just students, they are children. They are our kids. So we do need to always focus. They are the why that we do what we do. And one of your analogy is we are the desert irrigators. I love that because we're going to make a flower bloom. We're gonna water the desert, and it's going to turn into a lush field with flowers. And that's what we do on a daily basis, and I think Spotsylvania County does it well. So that's awesome. There are a couple things that I have questions about with the budget, but I'll ask those on Wednesday. But I do want to mention, because Mr. Braswell mentioned the picture of all the students, the children with their future attire, and it just reminded me of something I've read recently, and I'm probably saying it incorrectly, but teachers are the only profession that teaches every other profession. So doctors, lawyers, carpenters, anything, they started off in a classroom with a teacher, and the teachers who taught all of those professions from day one. So I thank you again. Thank you, staff. This is really good. Thank you.
Mrs. Phillips?
Thank you, Dr. Baker, and all the staff out there. I really value the work and that the staff put into the presentation, but as you all know, we have a long way to go, right? It's just the beginning. So that's all I have, but thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mr. Twig?
Thank you. Certainly good things are happening. This is an exciting budget for me. Our statistics do show some promise historically, recent history. And we certainly have to invest in strategic places, and we've covered Dr. Baker's budget, encountered much of that through additional personnel, which I found throughout my district is the premier and primary need for the schools in Livingston, and also the salary adjustments, and of course we still have to push toward getting more funds in our classrooms. So those will be strategic pushes that we'll be emphasizing, but much of that was covered in the projected budget. I'm excited about that part. And thank you, Dr. Baker and company, for all of your hard work toward putting this quality budget together. Thank you.
Comes back to me. I just want to thank the staff and Dr. Baker again for all your efforts going into this budget. And I just want to say that this is my 5th budget season, and everyone knows this is my favorite time of the year. And it's no one else's favorite time of the year, especially you guys out there. But I like this part. So I have found, though, ever since my first year, and the presentations do a great job of relaying it, and for some reason, people don't understand how serious I am when I tell people that every dollar that is spent in the school system can be tied directly to the strategic plan. And that is one of the most amazing things that I find with the leadership in this school system, is that truly every decision has to show how it can meet one of the goals in order to fulfill the strategic plan. And that is what I'm always confident in, knowing that we put together a budget that is not full of fluff, and there is a reason for every dollar spent. And that always makes me feel like it's something worth fighting for, and it's very thorough. I also want to remind people that we are in a very unique situation, that we are tasked with approving a budget and not having any control over any side of the credit side of the equation. We are just the people that are identifying which debit side we need, and the credit side people from any source. There are multiple sources that we are never sure what that value is going to be, sometimes long after even this budget is proposed. And as we know, even after the budget is finalized, it can still change, like a couple years ago on the state's part. So we are tasked with a very difficult task, and that is only controlling one side, where most people in a household, they identify their bills and they create an income in order to pay their bills, or if their income is fixed, they spend less and they make it work. We don't have that luxury when we are preparing a budget. We have needs, and we are tasked by the state to prepare a needs-based budget that fulfills our strategic plan, which we do a great job of. So we will work hard to control our side of the equation and hope that the other sources and the other side of the equation value education and supporting our strategic plan as much as we do. The last thing I want to remind people is that we as a school system are only productive due to all of our employees. There was one of those slides that literally has all the departments on the same path, and everybody is critical. And that's why I think that incorporating the 3-year salary adjustment plan, it doesn't focus on one group. It focuses on bringing everybody to competitive levels so that we can maintain the success of the school system that we currently have. Everybody is just as valuable as everybody else. We're all working system that has to be appreciated, and we have to retain everybody. We can't let one side of the system go and just focus on the other. So it's nice that we have all the parts of the Evergreen study included in the 3-year plan so that all the employees are valued. And with that being said, I look forward to our work session on Wednesday, and I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn, Madam Chair.
Motion by Mr. Braswell, a second by Mr. Twig. All those in favor?
Aye.